Hey, I'm Tiffany, and I will take about just 2 minutes to talk about our aesthetic and environmental decisions for our game. Our goal is to provide a creepy atmosphere based on the interiors of a disorganized and chaotic Victorian mansion. Furniture was misplaced and scattered, dishes strewn about, signaling that there might have been chaos as the mansion's residents fled or fought back. The levels are in near complete darkness, and an ambient hum is added to the background as we aimed for an unsettling and eerie feeling. Footsteps are the major sound that plays as the player walks around to really sell that feeling of being alone. We gave the player the option to operate the lantern as they navigated and explored the levels, so they can make the conscious decision to see what's ahead or risk getting caught by the ghosts. There was a major overhaul of our initial design ideas. Playtesters didn't like the locked camera angle, just like the one in Metal Gear Solid, so we changed it where camera movement is now tied to the mouse. We deviated from the low-resolution style as we thought that would take away from the intricate details of Victorian-era furniture and designs. We've also removed the health system and turned it into lives to increase the risk level and push the difficulty of the game. If you get caught once, your progress is reset to the start of the levels.
Alright, this is Ken here, and I will be talking about the player mechanics. So first off, let's talk about the character movement and sprinting. You can walk freely through the mansion with the WASD keys, but if you need to pick up the pace, you can sprint by holding down the shift key. However, be cautious, because sprinting makes more noise, and in this haunted mansion, that means you're more likely to be detected by the ghosts. So the player has to find the right balance between speed and stealth. Sprint when you need to escape, but be ready for the consequences. Keep an eye for your stamina bar, which is shown here at the top left of the screen. Sprinting uses it up, and if it runs out, you won't be able to run for a set amount of time. So, you get to choose. Do you want to run away from the ghosts, or do you want to hide from them? Now, speaking of hiding, there is a way to get past ghosts while staying hidden. If you need to stay quiet, hold down the left control key to crouch. This will make it harder for the ghosts to detect and hear you, which is the perfect way to avoid detection when you run out of stamina. When all else fails, and you need to catch your breath or simply escape from an aggressive ghost, your best option is to hide in a closet. There are closets scattered throughout the mansion, which can be interacted with by pressing the E button. While hidden, you're invulnerable to the ghosts, and you'll be able to regain your stamina. Now let's talk about your lantern, which is your only source of light as you navigate through the mansion's dark rooms. You must keep an eye on the yellow UI bar in the top left corner. That's your lantern fuel, and it depletes over time when you keep it lit. When your lantern goes out, things will get a lot more difficult for you, as you'll have a hard time navigating through the darkness and might miss some treasure pieces. Luckily, there are matchboxes hidden around the mansion that you can pick up. These will refill your lantern's light bar, giving you a little more time to explore. As you explore, you'll also come across treasures. There are 53 of them scattered across the mansion, each one waiting to be discovered. They're not essential to your survival, but collecting them is a nice side objective for those who are competitive gamers wanting to get a perfect score. Throughout the mansion, you'll encounter locked doors. These are gateways to new areas, but they won't open without the proper key. Keys can be found in various places, and once you've picked one up, they'll be added to your inventory. Then, when you come across the same locked door, pressing E will automatically use up the key and open it up. Now, all of these mechanics, running, crouching, hiding, and managing your lantern, these are all important, but remember, this mansion is not empty. The ghosts are always patrolling, always listening, and if detected, will chase you down. The trick to surviving is knowing when to move quickly, when to stay still, and when to find a safe place to regain your strength.
Hi, my name's Neo. I'm one of the artists, and I will be covering the level design for our game. Originally, the first level looked completely different. It was much shorter and much more simpler. We had the first level pretty straightforward, and there is not much room to traverse or explore around. Our goal for the first level was to introduce the player to our mechanics and our controls. During the first few playtests we had, we received a lot of feedbacks in regards to the level and decided to scrap it and start from scratch. We took some time in class after the playtest and looked at various mansion floor plans to get an idea of how the first floor of a mansion is normally laid out. Using these floor plans for reference, we drew out a handful of sketches with new layouts for the first floor. Eventually, we settled on a finalized version. After the building was laid out, we discussed how the player would be led through the map. We used candles and treasures to point the players in the correct direction. We placed at least 2 closets in any room where ghosts were present. This allowed players to hide while running around or away from enemies. During the playtesting, we found that the rooms were too dark once the lantern had run out, and nearly impossible to traverse. To fix the issues, we added candles and ceiling lights around areas that were extremely dark. These candles also served as a guide for the player to point them in the right direction.
Hi, my name is Santiago, and I will be talking about the enemy mechanics. So, the way that the enemies work is they follow these set spline paths, which are layered all over the map. Or, I guess not all over, but in a certain area of the map. And what they do is they'll just walk along this path indefinitely until they see the player. Until the player enters their line of sight, they will just be following these paths around the room. In the event that there is no set path for the enemy, they can wander to what are called patrol points. And what they will do instead is they will walk from patrol point A to patrol point B in a random sequence. So they're never going to this. They could never go to the same point twice. So once you encounter the enemies and enter their room, they become activated. And from here, they begin walking around and patrolling the room along the set path. As you can see here, you can see how far they can see as well as they can hear. When they are yellow, they are chasing you, or they're looking for an investigative position, and when they turn red, they are chasing the player with the intent to kill the player. You can hide inside closets, like I've done so, to avoid them. After they lose sight of the player, they'll return to their path and they'll go back to wandering around. In which case you can exit, but if you make too much sound, they'll come back and investigate. When the enemy does manage to catch the player, they have a kill that cannot be stopped in any way, shape, or form, and then they go back to investigating. So in this case, I got caught by another enemy. The enemies themselves are pretty simple and straightforward. They're pretty easy to avoid if you manage to just run around them. They're not too fast, so you can get away from them fairly simply. So a thing with the enemies is that when they are passive, they are blue. We have 3 colors for the enemies. There is blue, yellow, and red. So blue means passive, yellow means they're investigating a sound that they heard, so they'll be traveling to a location where they sense something. And red means that they have seen the player and that they're going to attack. You can see here this enemy is yellow, which means he'd be investigating my current position because I've made too much sound. However, he's currently stuck just because I have not enabled him. And then if I enter his line of sight, he'll turn red, which means he has spotted me and he is aggressive now. The only way to lose aggression with the enemies is to exit their line of sight. So instead they'll just investigate your last known position, or to hide in a closet. Hiding in a closet will cause them to investigate the last position they saw you, and then return to their passive state. Both enemies have unique attack animations. This one comes up behind you and breaks your neck, and this one will force choke you if you get too close. However, she's currently disabled, so she cannot choke me. So if you see now, that's the first enemy kill, and here is the second one.